All right, so let's take a look at where we left off last time. We have our character. The character walks around. If you want to, don't forget, you can adjust settings under this character movement. There's max acceleration, gravity, all this good stuff. We can also add a multiplier later in blueprints that can increase the speed. But for now, what we want to do is we want to be able to give our player character an enemy. So the best way to do this for me is we already have a blueprint in place, which is our player character blueprint. So what I'm going to do is just right click and I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to name it robot AI. So let's just hit F2 or right click and I'll name this robot 245 AI. And there's our 245 blueprint. Actually, let's start off with AI robot 245 blueprint. A little bit easier to distinguish. And let's go ahead and open this up. And what we're going to do is edit some of the things in here we don't need. So for example, all of this movement controls, that controls the character's movement in the camera. We don't need that. We also didn't need this spring arm and camera, which if you remember is what's following around our player. And then to make sure that we don't have any errors, just go ahead and compile and save that. All right, so now that we've compiled and saved this, let's close this out for a second. And we need to create another AI class. So what I think I'm gonna do is in this blueprints folder here, I have an enemy AI folder from a previous demo that I was sort of setting up. So for now, we'll just create another folder outside here and we'll call this like 245 AI. So 245 AI and let's do underscore AI because you can't have spaces and go back into the 245 character folder here. And I'm just going to grab that AI robot 245 in here just because it makes it a little bit easier for me to break up between my character and my AI. So this could be 245 BP and this could be like enemy NPC. But anyway, so here's our AI robot. So what I'm going to do here is right click. I'm going to create another blueprint class and go to all classes. And in here, type in AI. All right, and what we're looking for is this one right here, AI controller, and hit select. All right, I'm going to name this AI. Let's hit F2 to rename AI underscore robot underscore AIC for AI controller. All right, so let's go back and open up AI robot 245. If you get this where it only shows you the most important sort of properties on the side, you can see the full editor by clicking open full blueprint editor here. And in the pawn class, you can see it says AI controller class. When you click on that drop down arrow, you should see the AI, the 245 AI controller that we created. So just to make sure, let's dock this here. And we had named this AI robot AIC. So actually I'm going to rename that one more time just to make it easier. So it always has that 245 prefix. And in here, I'm going to click it down here. You can see AI 24 robot AIC. In your own game, you probably would give it a name of the character that was being designed or something like that. But for the 245, just kind of helps us sort of stay on track with what's connected to what. All right, so you can either hit compile and save like before or hit F7 and save here or Control S. And let's go back to our scene. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm actually going to delete this idle robot until we decide to make animations or something for it. But I'd like to put this AI robot BP somewhere in our level. So for now, I'll place the character maybe right over here. And then that way, I hit F to focus. We can sort of experiment with walking over once our character sees. So for example, if we play our game and we walk over to this character here, you can see that this character's in this room and we can start to say we have a sliding door there. We can kind of time some gameplay around that. Right now, our character isn't really moving. So our AI character, it's not following us. But something you do notice actually is if we walk up to it, it did inherit the animation controller. So you can see that our character is idling here. So what we need is a Nav Mesh. So let's go ahead and click on this. And you can see under volumes here, we have Nav Mesh Bounds Volume. So we're going to click on that. And you can see it's pretty high up in the air. So let's go ahead and just zero these out for a second, just so we can get it somewhere close to our scene. And I'm going to go ahead and press W here to sort of move it over. Now you're not seeing anything because we have to hit P, like Peter or Paul or Paula, to see this little green area. And what this does is when we scale up our nav mesh here, so I'm going to hit R, you can see it takes into account not only the areas that are ground planes, but it also anything that's a little bit higher that has collision. And what's nice about this is all of these walls that we built earlier with the collision, the AI robot is going to know when it's sort of roaming around this nav mesh, sorry, I meant to hit W and I hit 2 instead, so change the view. So W moves it, as you can see here, and then R scales it. So we're just kind of scaling this up and just marking the area that, let's go ahead and make sure we reset this back a little bit. And that way. So for now, I kind of just want the robot to stay within the bounds of the house so that like maybe there's a safe zone where, again, we haven't fully figured out what our gameplay is yet. We're just sort of creating a shell here of like we can, that we can sort of spitball or generate ideas. So we could have a game about a cat burglar. So maybe if we move our start position out here, and then we play this, our character will start outside, and you have to figure out a way to get inside without like the security is trying to find you, or you're trying to steal items, or it's a murder mystery like originally I was talking about in the first few videos. All right, so let's go ahead and hit Control S to save this level. All right, something else I want to show you is that in real time, we can actually move our objects around and it'll update, which is pretty nice if you're creating sort of like a moving platform, or if you're like, you know what, we need a second birthday cake. So I'm holding Alt to duplicate this table here. Or if you are extending a wall, right? Maybe one of these wall pieces or what have you, maybe this pillar, which actually we can delete out now that we have our character in there. All right, so let's take a look also at something else that popped up earlier. So when I clicked here and we went to volumes, we saw there was this Nav Mesh Modifier volume. So if I click on that and add that to my scene, you can use it for a variety of things. So let's start off with the most generic. I can use it to kind of cut out an area and block where I don't want the character to walk. So for example, say there is a room that I definitely don't want any of the AIs to go in. And let's say it's this room. So I can say, okay, well, this is going to be a hiding room where none of the AIs go in. And maybe there's like a character in my game that is like, somebody I would talk to, or this can be a hiding place from zombies or whatever it is. So I can add this here and it'll cut that area out. I can also use it for, if you go to area class here and you click this drop down, there's these different options. So if you highlight over them, you'll get a tooltip, and this says a regular navigation area applied to entire navigation data. So if you click on it, you can see it just works as a regular navigation area. It's sort of adding to it. So if there's an area like stairs or something and the modifier isn't registering it, you can use this as an additional modifier. There's also this low height, which adds to, it's allowed there. Now, the difference between blue and, for example, red, so you can see there's low height and then there's the obstacle here, is say this is a very complicated mesh area that the character would go in. It would actually be able to traverse that area, but it knows it's an expensive area in respect to computing. For now, just know that you can use it as for the default state of either adding or sort of like blocking out certain areas, or, so things like that. For now, I'm okay with my default area there. I think for now, I think that's good. In the next video, we'll explore actually trying to get this character to explore that nav area, or moving around that nav area.